I would say between I would say between now and Saturday, they're going to be at their peak. So a month from now, unfortunately, you will not see the beauty that this city has to offer around this time of the year. But if you're coming from a colder climate like Vermont or Maine or what have you, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be around 70 degrees and sunny. So I'm this is my first time actually being at a face to face. I look forward to meeting you. There's some of you I've been talking to every week for about 2 or 3 years, and I've not yet to meet in person. So I'm very excited, and I'm very happy to work with all these great people at NAPE. They're really truly dedicated to the pursuit of equity from its most basic, elemental, fundamental forms to where we are today in terms of how we translate that into policy understanding and advocacy in the areas of educational equity. So thanks a lot, Greg, for letting me talk for a few minutes, and I'm happy to move forward.
All right, and just before I move one more step, I just want to acknowledge the president of the NAPE Foundation Board, Dr. Lou Hargrave. Would you like to say a few words?
I too am looking forward to the spring. I believe that we've always tried to schedule an in-person meeting at this time so people can enjoy their walk to the Hill. And so that's one of the reasons we always like to have it in Washington, D.C. It makes it easy for our our national agencies, officials to come and speak to us. It makes it easy for us to talk to our representatives on the Senate side and the House side. It's just a great place to have a conference, and I can't wait.
All right, thank you. So we're going to get going. As I said earlier, for those of you who didn't hear, I'm Gregory Jackson. I'm Associate Director for Membership and Volunteerism. Some of you who may be getting invoices in the mail or learning about NAPE benefits, you're hearing from me, either directly or indirectly. So here I am. I normally don't put my video on with these meetings. I like to let members connect with members. I am staff to members. This is your organization, and I'm really delighted and honored to work with all of you representing the entire country. I'm going to move to the next slide. And one of the things is, and I also want to acknowledge Kathy Albin, who's the Member Services Chair for the Executive Committee, who just joined us. These monthly meetings, this is actually the final of a series of monthly member-to-member meetings that the Executive Committee has put together, curated for you based on your interests as NAPE members. From the feedback that you provided from our surveys and from the one-on-one conversations that we've had and other ways that we've engaged you, we've taken that information to build these monthly series. And this is the final of this series that Kathy led and conceived more than a year ago in putting it together. So I want to acknowledge Kathy Albin coming in from Spokane. And the whole idea of member connections and member engagement is what I see as the value add to NAPE as compared to other similar organizations that are focused around equity and CTE, in that you are the driver. Our goal is to help members through discovery, through our professional development and learning that was provided to you, making connections with each other around this work, either through the PD that you've done or other experience that you have, and sharing them both within your region, within your institutions, and nationally through these different kinds of engagement. So that's the second part of this member connection, connect. And then the final part of this connection is finding ways to learn, implement, and innovate in a way that improves our day-to-day work and has the potential to positively impact our peers and partners in the field. And that's through taking action, which is implementing solutions, monitoring progress through policies, solutions, and continually improve through advocacy. So those are the three levels of member engagement that we bring to you. This is one part of them. And I just want to acknowledge all the folks here. I want to thank you all for being part of this, this process. So let me move on to the agenda for the meeting. Our focus today is first, we're walking through right now what brings us here. And then we're going to walk through the pre-conference. We're going to share out on the summit strands. We're going to talk a little on the workshops and speakers. There's going to be an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Advocacy Day and Hill visits. And some of the folks here on the call, including Joe, and those of you who've had a lot of experience in DC, can share a little on some of the things to explore while you're in DC. And then we're going to take, as we do in all of these member meetings, an opportunity to hear from you and for you to share your own experiences. We'd love to hear about the experiences that you've had at past NAPE conferences. What were those like for you? What are you looking forward to? What excites you about getting together this year? And any questions that you may have that came up during what we've shared. I want to acknowledge our NAPE CEO, Brittany Brady. She's unable to be with us today. She is really not feeling well. She's under the weather. So we're going to push forward without her, but her spirit is with us. And so I'm going to be sharing her thoughts as we move into the next section of this meeting. So all of you know, equity, elevate, empower. These are the catchwords that we're using. This is the theme for the summit. This theme centers equity and is focused on elevating student voice and empowers advocates. This is our first year in person since 2019. And this is our first year in Washington, D.C. after many years in Crystal City. So this is an exciting time. And where we want to start is what brings us here. This is where the works begins, but I would like to take for a moment before we kind of move into the nuts and bolts and moving parts for the National Summit to use the chat to share about what excites you about learning in a summit atmosphere. And what do you hope to experience in Washington, D.C.? So if you could take like a next minute or two, couple minutes, and share in the chat so that we can all kind of see where you're at. What excites you about learning in a summit environment? And what do you hope to experience in Washington, D.C.? Anyone wish to start? Okay, we have Kathy Albin. She's looking forward to, oh, this was a personal note to somebody.
That's all right. It's a personal note, but it really is open to anybody. I mean, I participated for the first time at the NAPE Summit in 2017, and I love the networking and hearing new ideas from my colleagues across the United States. And specifically when I was working with special populations in Perkins 5, loving hearing what others were doing with their CNLA work. So the summit is something that I have looked forward to every year since 2017.
Excellent. And we have something in here from Annette Eldridge, ways to empower our adult learners. Looking forward to connecting with other special population peers. Mm-hmm. Michael, would you like to share that?
Yes, sir. So most folks that are on the call probably weren't here the last time we were in conference, even though we've had one who's already shared that she has. This is an opportunity that gets real exciting. If you've been stuck around inside during COVID anyway, this is a great conference to go to. Even pre-COVID, this was an awesome conference. It's always exciting to hear about what's going on across the country. We're all like-minded around equity, but we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different states. We all come from different situations, whether it's K-12 or college or state level. And it's fascinating to hear what's going on in Georgia, in Vermont, in California, all across the country, in Texas, and to hear, wow, okay, they experience very similar things that we experience, and how did they overcome that? How did they get did they get to having 20 women in welding and to parity in Oregon? How did they do that? How did they move through that process? And like, cause we can only get one female in welding, all of those things, right? And then the relationships that are built at the conference, or the ones that are enhanced at the conference from the virtual ones that we've had in places like this, it takes things to another level. The number of states that I went to and the number of folks who came from other states to my state traveling to basically share the same things that I share is different for my colleges and my K-12 partners, because when they hear it coming from Georgia or California or New York or wherever, even though it's the same message I've been sharing, that it seems like, oh wow, well maybe that is the way we need to be doing it. And so it just gets everybody sparked. So there's a lot of collegial relationships that are built and then built upon after the conference from states and locals across the country that we then utilize and have folks come in, or we go to other folks and we basically share the message, or even share some new things that folks haven't heard of. And it gets a real excitement. It's that when you go home, quote unquote, go home, there's a fire there as well, but it's also the next steps after that. Like, what do we do now that we've went to the conference, we've heard these cool things? What are the next steps? And those next steps always include the relationships that you formed at the conference or that were strengthened at the conference, is utilizing those folks either virtually or in person. Okay, I'll be quiet because I could go on this whole time.
Yeah, that's great. We love the energy, Michael. And I concur. I met some great people at the conference who, as a staff person, I ended up working very closely with. And what I love is the interactions over meals, the interaction, quite frankly, at the bar the night before the summit, just sitting down with our laminates and getting to know folks in the room and finding out where they're from and some of the things they're working on, and end up working with them for a couple of years on some amazing things that have had a huge national impact. It all began over a drink or a plate of wings at the bar, at the hotel, or sitting down with total strangers at meals. And I encourage you to sit out and sit with people and eat with people that you don't know. You if you're traveling with your team, you're always with your team. Sit down with some other folks and find out who's sitting next to you, and you'd be surprised on some of the wonderful opportunities that come from some of those simple moments.
Gregory, Ruth is being polite, and she's had her hand up a long time, and I know she's polite.
Okay, Ruth.
Thanks, Lou. And thanks, Gregory. So I've been attending I started attending what used to be the PDI and has become the summit. And Lou, I think I started attending in 1999. And attending the summit annually I'm so grateful it's back in person this year. I've missed it because it's the professional development, I think, that keeps me going in the equity work that I do. It's those connections, those relationships I've built over the years, both the ones that go back to 1999 and continue, and the ones that are newer. But I learned so much, but I also feel like it gives me that battery charge for my own energy to keep doing the work for the next year ahead. It personally recharges my commitment to the equity work that we're doing.
Yeah, I love the way Ruth says that, because sometimes you do feel isolated, right? In your own college or your own K-12 district. Sometimes you feel isolated because you're the only special populations person, you're the expert. But when you come here, everybody's doing the similar work, or they're doing it in a different way, and it's exciting to feel part of that community. So Ruth, I appreciate that.
Be with such a large group of people who are committed to equity in CTE is like so powerful.
Really is. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. All right, so one of the things to know about the summit is that we like to serve as a nexus of understanding, meaning we bridge practice, policy, and research to achieve success for students and families we serve. And so we actualize that by including student and learner voice when we can, as much as we can. And so this is imperative in order to strengthen our understanding. And by centering the voice of the most proximal to marginalization, we can hope to address systemic barriers and bias. And so throughout the summit, you will hear directly from these voices, from keynotes to workshops we are intentional about the voices that we will share. So I just want to make that clear. So, we're really excited about the pre-conference. So the pre-conference and the conference, we're talking about them as a whole. And, what's exciting about that is that these offerings that you see here, micro messaging, explore non-traditional careers, eliminating barriers through culturally responsive teaching, and equity in Perkins 5, these are tried and true programming. These are just a sampling of what we offer, but things like micro messaging, explore non-track careers, these are the core of NAPE's work. Eliminating barriers through culturally responsive teaching is something that, based on the NAPE survey that we've held over the past year, has risen as the top requested professional learning as far as wanting to know more about promising practices in this area. And Perkins 5, equity in Perkins 5 is also a very important part of our work. Also, we're hosting the Equity Leadership Institute, which will highlight our newest NSF-funded curriculum. So that's some exciting things that are happening with the pre-conference. Also during the pre-conference, we're going to be doing a site visit at Oxon Hill High School to see their CTE programming. We will be visiting their culinary arts program as well as pre-engineering classroom. And this school is primarily students of color and a great example of CTE in a diverse context. So please, if you haven't, consider joining us for the pre-conference. And what I'm sharing here with you are the summit strands. So you will see 4 listed here, and they're pretty self-explanatory: promoting STEM and CTE, equitable learning environments, understanding Perkins 5 and temporary assistance for needy families, and public policy and advocacy. And within them, there are telescoping into some of these specific areas that you see highlighted under them. And so for those of you who are listening to the audio, under promoting STEM and CTE, we will share out advanced CTE's equitable and inclusive CTE. Under equitable learning environments, how to use student voice to achieve equity. And with the understanding Perkins 5 and temporary assistance for needy families, supporting special program college students with a holistic approach. And with public policy and advocacy, within that strand, there's a focus on youth-led advocacy, education, journalism, and getting the story right. So those are pretty self-explanatory. Here, I'm sharing with you our keynote speakers, and this is something that many folks who come to the summit are always excited about and leave really jazzed and revved up. And there's been a lot of buzz about our keynote speakers over the years, and I think this year is going to be another one of them. Dr. Eve Ewing is a scholar activist and an expert within the field, and as a poet, artist, writer, and a supporter of all children, with a special love for her hometown of Chicago. Dr. Ewing is a highly sought after voice on inclusive practice and centering student voice. And a fun fact about her is she's also a writer of Marvel comics. For all you Marvel nerds out there. I'm a DC man myself, but that's okay. And Kathy Tran is a youth policy expert and a champion for inclusion of youth voice when making policy decisions. Kathy is a rising star in the policy space with a known commitment to equity and justice. So these are our 2 keynote speakers. You've heard it, and we hope that you can join us so that you can hear from them. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm not sure if NAPE staffer Lauren Hall is on the call with us, but this is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about Advocacy Day and Hill visits and some things to do while we're in DC. And Michael, I do not see Lauren
That's okay.
on the call, but can you give us a general
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
highlight on what Policy Day?
Yeah, so just quickly for those who are somewhat new to NAPE or haven't been to DC with NAPE, this is our historical roots back in the 70s of going to the Hill and making our presence known for legislation prior to becoming an actual organization that folks from across the country would meet together and then go to DC and go on the Hill and advocate for what at the time was vocational education. And so that has continued forward, obviously, and now in career and technical education space and equity in relation to that. And so what we will do is we will encourage anybody that's coming to DC to go ahead, and the key here is advocate. So Advocacy Day as opposed to lobbying. It's not lobbying at all. I know that some folks, depending on where they work, talking to legislators is kind of frowned upon. And so sometimes it's about, number one, maybe it's just going to talk to your legislator from your state, your senator or your house representative. And so going in to meet them and say that, hey, you work at such and such school district or such and such college or such and such state agency, and just meeting staffers there, that's always a good start if you've never done that before anyway. But then if there's something to advocate for, you're looking for more money, I'm going to use Perkins because that's one of our strong legislative pieces, or WIOA, or the Farm Bill, because it's got that's in Congress now being discussed because it has a lot of TANF ties to it. If those are some of the things that you would like to advocate for your students, then that's something that we'll have a conversation about. But we'll also make sure that we have a handful, I'm going to say 4 or 5 of some of those either staffers from NAPE or some of folks like myself or Dr. Hargrave, who will take groups that if you can't, for some reason, if maybe in your position you feel you're kind of worried about going and talking to a legislator by yourself, we're going to form groups. And so we'll take a group of 10 or so, and we'll go and we'll meet with a legislator and have that scheduled on Advocacy Day, and you can walk with us up there and just experience what it's like to do that. And I know that was the first time that I did that a decade ago. It was informative for me to learn how that conversation goes, and just to say, oh, okay, that makes sense. And you leave a one pager about who NAPE is, for example, or if you're visiting your state representative, about what your organization is, or who you work for, and what you do. You do special populations at college X, Y, or Z, or in district ABC, and that if you're from their state, that's very meaningful as well. And it may just be a chance to meet them and share with staffers about some things that you need some more money in Perkins or whatnot. So it's a good opportunity to meet your own legislators, or if you're kind of hesitant about doing that, is going with another group to meet other legislators that may not be particularly from your state, but just sitting in the room around the conference table and listening to that conversation that's led by someone else. And maybe you still have something that while you're in there that you're a little more encouraged to speak up, and you get that opportunity. But going to the halls of Congress and seeing the things that have happened over the last 3 to 5 years in DC, and whether it's been protests or you've seen gatherings, and walking through those halls where some of those things have occurred, or outside on the Hill grounds, and learning where Senate office buildings are and House representatives buildings and hallways are. There's power in that, right? And there's also power to go and walk by your senator or your House representative's door, their actual office, and just meet a staffer even. There's something unique about doing that if you've never done that before. And so those are some things that you can also take back home, in talking to your local mayor or your state legislatures, or and governors and so forth, is just having the opportunity to do those things, or to see somebody else do it, because advocacy is what we do as an organization, and that's mostly why all of us are part of NAPE, is because we want to fight for those who technically can't fight for themselves, or we just want to be a part of doing something that's bigger than ourselves. And Advocacy Day on the Hill is a part of that opportunity. And again, I will be quiet unless there's questions specific
No,
about
I
it.
think you need to add a little bit more, Michael. What about the fact sheets? Tell them kind of a little bit more about the content.
Okay, great. Yeah, so NAPE does provide fact sheets for each state, and those are some things that they're provided if you go onto the NAPE website. and look under the public policy page, we actually have the fact sheets, the current fact sheets. We're going to have them updated by the time we go next month to the summit for the 23 fact sheets, but the 22 fact sheets are up there. And so we'll have one for each state. And those fact sheets, just so you're aware, they come from different places like the U.S. Department of Education. We pull all the public data that's available out there around career and technical education and / equity. And when you see those fact sheets, that's something that what we try to do is we try to at least print one out and take it to the representative that we're going to see for his or her state, right? Because that's some of the stuff that they really want to know. If you're going to talk to a legislator about what's going on in his or her state and you have a fact sheet around that, it's pretty important. And also as you go home, you pulling up those fact sheets from the public policy page, if you don't have one in writing, you can go and look at them digitally online at the NAPE website, napeequity.org, and then click on the public policy page and go down to state fact sheets. And there's one for every state from 2022, and when they go back 5 or 6 years at least. And then the 2023 ones will be up here in just a couple of weeks as well, so that'll be ready for the summit. So those state fact sheets are something tangible that you can utilize with legislators. They love that information. That's one of my first introductions to legislator. When I handed them a state fact sheet, they then asked me for information about, I work at with the college and university system in Tennessee. And so they started asking me, because it was my legislator, and he started asking me specifically about what's going on at my institutions. And so I knew that data off the top of my head already. And so I was able to provide that. And then that caused a follow-up call from his staffers to ask me for more data, specifically around his state. And then he ended up using that in the committee meetings. And by the way, committee meetings are always available online when they're going on, so you can listen and get transcripts from those. So he utilized that exact data that I was providing, and there was a follow-up call to ask for more data. So I ended up being a resource for a legislator, which was beneficial as we were doing reauthorization for Perkins and WIOA. Is that, I kind of had I don't want to say like a friendly relationship, but I was known there, and they would take my call or my visit, and I got time with them that I don't know that I would have gotten otherwise, but it was based upon building that relationship. Just what we talked about coming to DC anyway with ourselves as groups of individuals across the country. You do that same thing with your legislators and their staff. And if you are someone that you can be in awe of what they do and their position, that's all fine and good, but you also want to become a resource for them. It doesn't mean you'll be the resource on that first day, but that first time that you go into that office may be that building confidence for you to then follow up with more information, especially if you're going into a legislator's office that is someone who represents your state. And so your district or your college or your state office may be able to be a resource for that legislator, because they are always looking for data to support things that they want to put into legislation. Lou, something else?
You're muted.
Just make everybody aware that if you can and you want to see your legislators, it would be important for you to make appointments now. There will be information easily available on how to contact that office and ask for usually it's a staffer who's responsible for education, and get specific if you can, career and technical education, STEM, use that kind of language and ask for time to speak. Don't be disappointed ever that you get to speak to a staffer.
That's right.
Most often the staffers know more specifics as to language than the legislator. The legislators will eventually get there, but the staff has been charged with getting all of the minutia of particular laws in place. So if you're interested in modifying something, adding something, or however you want to see law in the future, just give them to the staffer, and then if they will either not be the correct staffer, they'll let you know, and they will promise you that they'll get it to the right person in that office.
And I would add to that staffers are more than 10-to-1 numbers compared to the actual legislators. And by the way, in case you didn't know this, the legislators, more often than not, they don't have everything in their mind about what they want into a bill. Those, I'm going to say 25-year-old staffers who've never had a career and technical education course, some usually, are the ones who are writing the legislation. And we try to carefully make sure that we go through that legislation as a group, because some of the most common mistakes is when they put in there the word "and" instead of "or." And if you've ever been had a requirement within WIOA or Perkins or TANF, and you have to do something and something else, that's different than doing something or something else. And so that is just that one word is such a big difference. But also, they don't truly understand career and technical education, but they're the ones who are drafting hundreds of pages of legislation on behalf of the legislator. And the legislator may just say, "Hey, make sure that so and so is in that particular A, B, and C is in that particular legislation." I can say from NAPE's perspective, we've actually handed legislation to legislators, and word for word gets put into Perkins 5, for example. So all of the equity languages in there came directly. The direct language wasn't even edited; came from NAPE. And so, giving and having that information and building those relationships with staffers is that foot in the door, because they are the ones that carry the water to the legislators. If they hear keywords that they know their legislator likes, and to what Lou was just saying right then, if you can go ahead and schedule that visit now, do it. Do a quick Google search. You should get the information you want. I'm offering to be able, I can provide you information about your particular legislator. If you want to put it in the chat, or DM me or email me, I can get you direct emails and such of their staffers. But their staffers will carry the water for them if they're listening directly for some keywords or phrases they know that. And if you look on the legislators' webpage at Congress, they will tell you what legislation they fought for in the past, what things are important to that particular legislator, and being able to know that in a conversation with them and saying, "Hey, I really appreciate the work you did on Perkins 4 and or on the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, and we appreciated that you put this part in there." And that's something, kind of, you want to say butter them up, but for them to know that you know who they are and what they can do for you as an individual at the state and local level is important, right? Because then that they understand that you know what you're talking about. And then, oh, what's your ask, by the way? Oh, we'd really like some additional dollars for pregnant mothers, or so whatever your advocacy may be about, right? So making sure that you're a resource for them, but also knowing that you know your stuff too, and it may be about that particular legislator that's important. And sometimes I carry that around on my phone, right? So I have these 3 legislators that I want to go talk to, and I've checked their websites. I know what they're doing, but I have it on my phone so I can quickly draw and look at it before I walk in their door and know what's going on with them. So when I meet with those staffers, the staffer goes, "Okay, this person knows what they're talking about. Oh, and they want something that's very similar to what my legislator does." And by the way, kind of throw out of your mind Republican, Democrat, right? Because I may be staunchly one direction, and the person I'm going in to talk to is staunchly the other direction, but I've already know what they've done historically in legislation, that I can find that point that brings us together, right? So in the farm bill that's coming up, the farm bill is overall strongly one direction, but there are some things in there that goes the other direction as far as sides of the aisle. And if you can find a talking point within the farm bill, for example, you can do that with every legislator. The farm bill is going to get passed. You want to make that connection with the legislator and make sure that the parts that he or she is known for within the legislation are things that you agree with. Even if you don't agree with anything else that legislator does, you can make a connection on the bill that you know is going to get passed, or that you want to make sure something's in there and it's something that you agree with. They have people come in all the time who disagree and want to protest, right? But if you come in there and you're making a connection with things that the 1 or 2 things maybe that you agree with, there's power in that. And that also leads to future relationships. And I've seen that too in the past. There's a way to make a connection with a legislator based on something that is similar to what you like or you believe, even though 90% of what they do may not be something that you're excited about or even want to support. But the thing that you do, again, makes that connection, makes that relationship that can move forward the next time that you want to call upon a legislator.
And there's another thing, don't be disappointed if that staffer has never been to your state before. Just recognize that's a good opportunity for you to share your state, how your educational systems are organized, maybe where your institution is that you're representing. And I would strongly suggest that you ask that question first of the staffer as you get to know them. If you haven't met them before, have you been to where are you from? Are you from our state? Do you know, don't make it offensive to them, but just let them know that it's okay and that you're there to share that kind of information. So that's when it's good to have, as Michael says, on your phone, a piece of paper, whatever, some facts about your school, your state, besides our fact sheet, that kind of customizes it to something that you can share with them. And
Yeah.
one other thing that's very important, if you say you're going to get back to somebody with some information, please do. Because if you don't, it's a disappointment, not only to them, but it's a very big disappointment for, just don't do it. Just ask you, I'd rather you say, I can't get that information, I'll try, or something of that, but don't promise something that you can't deliver. Because sometimes they will ask you for some important information and you have good intention, but when you get back home, you get busy, you forget, or you just don't know how to gather that information. So just know that it's okay to say, hey, I'm not the one, I'll try, but if I can't connect, I'll let you know.
Under
Don't leave
promise,
it-
over deliver. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar, at the summit, we provide transportation to the Hill for Policy Day, for Advocacy Day. But that's a one-way trip. And so now you're on the Hill. And so what I want to turn over, and I want to offer Joe an opportunity, and anyone else who spends significant time in DC, but Joe is sort of like, Joe's the expert on DC. He's a resident. He works there. He's a docent. He knows culturally what's happening. Me personally, I have my little preferences. I like Adams Morgan. I like to go get some good Ethiopian cuisine when I'm in DC. But maybe Joe, you can offer some ideas on cultural things or some other activities folks can do after their Hill visit while they're in town.
Yes, eat. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. I really am a foodie and I love to eat. That's first, and then second is I love our museums. I love our Smithsonian museums. And so as Greg alluded to, I do volunteer at the African American and the African Arts Museum every other Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. But as long as the museums are opening while you're here, if there's not a conflict with any of our workshops, I'll be happy to take you along on a tour. You don't need to make any sort of advance reservations through getting a day pass. I'll carry my badge with me while I'm at the summit. And so anyway, to answer Greg's question, the museums are free. They're paid for by your tax dollars, at least every 50 cents on a dollar for the most part. You see the most up-to-date, innovative artists and insightful analysis about our American heritage, our human condition. There's 19 museums on the mall, and it's just really beautiful. I can't speak more on that. And that probably runs second to, our primary reason for visiting, which is to see the Capitol. The Capitol you can also have access to. We will have, we can have access to it on a tour basis if you sign up ahead of time. So that's something I would also recommend. If you are a historian or have any sort of sense of understanding how Washington, D.C. came to be, there are several museums that are dedicated to the making of Washington, D.C. There's a school named after Benjamin Banneker, who was hired by George Washington, who was a freed Black man who actually helped design the city itself into what it is right now. So there's a lot of historical sites related to his work. There's Embassy Row, which runs up and down Connecticut. So if you're a worldly traveler, if you want to go kind of like in a virtual way around the world, you can walk up and down Connecticut Street and see the embassies of Russia, Ukraine, Poland. There's around 50 different countries are represented by these embassies along Embassy Road, that's along Connecticut, north of DuPont Circle. In Georgetown, there is a place, and I just cannot remember the name of it, but it's right off Wisconsin, and it's a place where most of the presidents went to, where Nixon used to eat when he was vice president. There's a booth where JFK proposed to Jackie Kennedy, Bouvier. She was named before she became a Kennedy, and the name, after I talk, I'll find the name and send it to you. But there are places along there, and there's also the wharf. which is also along in Georgetown, which has several dozen types of restaurants. And there's the John F. Kennedy Center, which hosts many of our plays and our concerts and things of that nature. I urge you to see what's there. And then I can't say finally, but for those of you who like water, there's the wharf, there's the Potomac, and there's several there's several boat tours. You can go from a very, very small boat that has about 20 to 30 people to something a little bit more intimate and larger that offers the Odyssey, that offers dinner. And then there's another wharf that's brand new, about 5 or 6 years, and it looks like the boardwalk in New Jersey, Atlantic City, and it's basically about maybe a mile long, and it has several different restaurants and things of that nature. So I've accented food, I've accented museums, I've accented the whole culture and art scene with the little dashes of history. But if anyone has any questions regarding, there's lots of walking paths. I walk every weekend up and down Anacostia Way where I am, and there's Rock Creek Park that runs right down the middle of Washington, D.C., about 7 miles from one end to the other. You can run, walk, and it's just beautiful, just beautiful. So thank you, Greg, for giving me the floor. I have to stop because I can just go on and on.
He can, but Joe, we've left him at the Hill without a way to get back home. Can we just say that it's 6 blocks back to the hotel if they choose to walk? Taxis are all the way around the mall. If you only have a few minutes or 30 or an hour
Mhm.
after your Hill visits, I mean,
Yeah.
you walk to the Smithsonian Institute, the Native American, for example, that's there. And if you don't feel like walking to the hotel, you certainly can get a taxi. They're just surround the place. And of course, there's always
That's correct.
Yeah. So thank you. And that's a good segue, Joe, by sharing out things in DC. One of the things that we encourage is that all of you, when as we get closer to the summit, we are going to launch the conference app, which is CVent. And
Yes.
you will get an invitation for that. And it'll be a great opportunity for you to begin putting together your profile with your photo. We're going to have opportunities within CVent where you can gather in communities, affinities, where you can discuss and share as the conference is taking place on some of your experiences through these affinity groupings. There's going to be a kiosk on other membership activities. And certainly we ask and invite you to post photos from your experience on the Hill and your experience within the conference itself, engaging with others and doing the things that you do, and even just having a good time. So through CVent, it's a great opportunity to network and to build those relationships. And while you're out in DC at the Capitol Hill, it's a great opportunity for you to connect with each other through the app and decide on where you want to go to eat, or if you want to go as a group to one of the Smithsonian's, or take a walk or take a jog or do morning yoga. So there are a lot of opportunities. So I just want to ask all of you to look out for the invite for CVent and get started on that as quick as you can. We're working hard to create some incentives for all of you to get together. But one thing that's always there, Joe's already kind of offered it for free, but one of the grand prizes is next time you're in DC, you'll get a personal tour of his beloved city, and the African American Museum, Smithsonian, by him, including a meal, as from what I take it. So hop on that, people, hop on that. So excuse me. So I'm going to turn it, we're at this point now where we've kind of done our overview for the National Summit. And, you know, we do this at all of our member meetings. We want to know what questions you have, and if there are any anecdotes from your experience with the summit that you wish to share with those on the call at this time. And you can unmute your line or you can use the text chat.
Hi, my name is Paulette Brown. This is my first time coming. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes,
Oh, okay. We're trying to kind of new at doing everything, but we missed the registration for the hotel. My question is about the hotel. We called to try to book it and get the summit price for it, and it ended on the 17th. And the hotel said to us today that if whoever set it up could extend the date, that they still had rooms left. My question is that still an option since they still have rooms left?
Paulette, it has been extended till the 30th, as long as rooms are available. So I don't know who you talked to, but the conference hotel has been extended until the 30th. What name are you using? Are you using the NAPE?
Yes, we called, to be honest today, me and my partner that are coming to the conference, we've called today about 20 times and we've talked to several different people and they all keep saying that we booked the hotel and we asked them we told them that it was what the price was and they said because it was expired on the 17th that we couldn't do it. So we spoke to the manager, the last person that I spoke with, and they said something to the effect of that we needed them to, someone from the conference to send an email to say that it's okay to continue to book, that they had no information on anything else other than that it was expired.
Paulette, can you send that to NAPE or me or somebody with the
I
names of
sent
people
it
that
to
have already?
Nate early. I sent
Okay.
it to Nate earlier this
I would
morning, but if you
send, can you just send it to Joe and I'm gonna let Joe and Michael,
okay.
because they're on the Summit Planning Committee, and they've been much more involved in, that's something that we need to let our conference planner know.
Yes.
So
Because it has been extended to the end of March, if I'm not mistaken.
it's until the 30th or until the books have been all booked. So that needs to be communicated to Joe. You're going to do that for Paulette and get back to her?
Yes, I will. I left my email in the chat box for you, Paulette. And
Oh, okay.
please
Thank you,
send
Joe.
me, yes, please do. I'll follow up.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe.
Great. Any other?
Well, yeah, while other people are either putting questions in or going to try to frame a question, the other things on Advocacy Day, we'll also have some, hopefully we're planning on some either panels or some staff to some legislative staff to be speaking in the afternoon at the hotel. We have a keynote speaker in the morning before we depart for the Hill. So we have a whole day wrapped around Advocacy Day, just beyond what we do when we go on the Hill. And so urge you now that if you're thinking about possibly meeting with a legislator, go ahead and reach out to their office and see if you can schedule a time for that Wednesday. If you are planning that week to do anything as far as African American Museum or any of the other ones, you might call and see if you can get tickets. Sometimes when visitors start coming in the spring, there's long lines, there's other things going on in town, and so just to know ahead of time if you think you might want to go to one of the museums. The Washington Monument's always something difficult. Even the White House, if you want to make a visit with the White House and you talk to your local legislators in your state, they can actually get you a ticket to there. Tell them what day you want to go, and that usually takes a few months ahead of time. So all of that pre-planning stuff, which makes a DC trip, especially your first time to DC, makes it more exciting. You need to start doing that immediately and get those plans in place and start making those contacts. Remember, those representatives are public servants, so you're not making an ask that's unreasonable. It's something that's very common. So you just need to make sure you ask it sooner than later so that they can accommodate you.
Great. Any other questions? So Joe, are we going to be able to see any of the what do you call it, the cherry blossoms, or are we past that?
Unfortunately, Greg, we're past that. The peak days will begin, I believe, today, tomorrow, and the next day. And even in this peak season that we're in, the variable weather, especially being below freezing or at freezing for the last 2.5 weeks, the cherry blossoms popped like popcorn. It's still in their brown pods, and then they died. It's just so sad.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's not a favorable season.
But it's beautiful right now, isn't it, Joe?
It is beautiful, but it isn't as beautiful because the thing is that they pop too fast, and then the weather got too cold, so they haven't really reached their bloom, but they're not like 100%. They're like 65%, and they still some of them still have their brown pods over them, so it doesn't give that fluffy whitish pinkish glow.
Thanks
Oh,
for getting me all excited, Joe.
I'm sorry to be such a cherry downer.
Well,
Hey,
we'll raise a glass at the bar in honor of the lost cherry blossoms this season.
They got a lot of cherry blossom branded drinks.
Hey,
We'll make
Joe.
up for it. Yes, Lou.
Joe, Michael, can you, the three of us stay on this virtual meeting? Gregory, you're welcome to stay, but as people sign off, just hang on for about 2 minutes. I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
So any other comments or questions from folks? We're almost at time.
Super excited to meet everyone and see you all in person, and especially again the community of equity it's a special thing, not just a conference, but it's a particular conference that we are doing things for our students, and I enjoy not being alone. Like sometimes I feel like in my own local state and city. So I look forward to seeing and meeting everyone.
Well, okay. Well, if there are no other comments, I want to thank everybody for coming in and joining us in this meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and we will share it with all the participants on this call, as well as all of our members, so they have an opportunity to learn from this experience as well. You can find all of our NAPE member meetings behind the firewall on our member page. So if you log into the NAPE website, you can go and listen to and observe all the other monthly meetings that we've had over a range of topics that are very interesting. So look forward to seeing all of you, and all of you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. And check out the podcast too. Gregory's worked hard on those podcasts.
Yes, he has. Thank you, Gregory.
Thanks for the plug, Michael. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.